Welcome to Serenity Path, your journey toward mastering the mind and embracing true inner peace. In today's video, we're diving deep into one of the most profound and powerful concepts, the art of detachment. We live in a world full of distractions, conflicts, and emotional turbulence, and it often feels like we're constantly reacting to what's around us. But what if I told you that the greatest act of intelligence isn't reacting at all? What if the key to real freedom and emotional control lies in choosing to observe, rather than engage? Today, we'll explore the powerful path of non-reaction, and why mastering the art of detachment can change your life forever. Stick with us until the end, because this video is packed with insights that could reshape how you handle conflict, relationships, and even your own inner world. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. 1. Understanding the trap of reacting. In our fast-paced, reactive world, it's almost second nature for many of us to respond to conflict with defense or aggression. We're taught from an early age that when someone insults us, we must retaliate. When challenged, we need to prove we're right. This drive to react stems from a deeply ingrained conditioning that fuels the ego. But have you ever asked yourself, why do we feel the need to react? Is it because we want to truly resolve the situation, or is it because the ego craves validation? Let's explore this concept critically, through both a philosophical and practical lens, looking at how these ingrained responses shape our lives and often lead us down a path of unnecessary conflict. Through this exploration, we will see that the greatest act of intelligence is not in defending our beliefs but in recognizing that we don't always have to respond. The ego is an insidious force. It manifests itself in the desire to defend our opinions, to assert our superiority, and to prove that we are right. But what is this desire really about? Is it about the truth, or is it about protecting a fragile sense of self? Take, for example, the famous businessman and philanthropist, Elon Musk, whose strong opinions are often seen as revolutionary but have also sparked heated debates. Musk's willingness to challenge others often leads to intense online exchanges where he defends his ideas without hesitation. The question is, what does he gain from it? Is he truly changing minds, or is he simply feeding his own need for validation? The reality is that reacting, whether it's defending, debating, or attacking, does not lead to meaningful resolution. It leads to a reinforcing cycle of conflict where no one gains anything but emotional exhaustion. It's the ego that thrives in this environment. Ego does not seek truth, it seeks to be validated. It doesn't care about understanding, it only cares about winning. But can victory in an argument truly be called victory if both parties leave without understanding each other? In Buddhist teachings, this very attachment to winning is what binds us to suffering. In Buddhism, suffering arises not from external events, but from our reactions to them. This is where the idea of non-reaction becomes vital. When we react from ego, we only add fuel to the fire. Think about a time when you argued with someone you care about, maybe it was over something trivial. What did you actually gain from that argument? More often than not, the only thing that results from a heated exchange is a growing distance between both parties. When was the last time you won an argument, only to feel peace afterward? More likely, you felt frustrated and drained, without any resolution. This is the trap we fall into when we allow our reactions to control us. Imagine a scenario where someone insults you, perhaps a figure like Donald Trump, who often sparks polarized reactions. It's easy to imagine someone hearing an insult or a challenging comment from such a prominent figure and feeling immediately compelled to react. But what happens when we engage in this type of immediate reaction? We take the bait. The other person gets what they want, a response, an emotional reaction. The power shifts from us to them. Consider the metaphor of a rock thrown into a calm pond. The rock creates ripples, and the water moves momentarily, but then, it returns to stillness. If we liken ourselves to that still water, we have the ability to choose whether to react or remain still. The rock represents external provocation, words, insults, disagreements. But we have the power to let those ripples pass, to choose stillness over reaction. Why do we allow external events to disturb our inner peace? What we often forget is that reactions, once triggered, can become automatic, like a reflex. This is how the ego works. When we perceive a challenge, we automatically feel compelled to defend ourselves, to argue, to prove we are right. The habit is so deeply ingrained that it becomes second nature, but in Buddhism, this is exactly the source of suffering. The Buddha taught that attachment to ideas and concepts leads to suffering. The moment we attach ourselves to the idea that we must defend or prove our point, we are trapped in the cycle of samsara, the cycle of birth, suffering, and rebirth, repeatedly caught in emotional storms that we create ourselves. So, what is the alternative to reacting? The Buddha offers us a path of mindfulness and detachment. In moments of conflict or provocation, instead of immediately reacting, we can pause, observe, and let go of the need to engage. This does not mean we become passive or indifferent. On the contrary, it's an active practice of mindfulness, where we choose to observe our thoughts and emotions before reacting. What would happen if we stopped and asked ourselves, does this really deserve my energy? Take, for example, the way Barack Obama often handles situations where he could easily react defensively. As a public figure, he's frequently faced with criticism and provocation. Yet, more often than not, Obama responds with calmness, steering away from personal attacks or emotional responses. He recognizes that the true strength lies in not reacting to every challenge. In his famous speeches, he often encourages dialogue over division, promoting understanding over conflict. This is an excellent demonstration of non-reaction in practice, a lesson we can all learn from. When we react, we believe we are in control of the situation. But in truth, the one who reacts is the one who is controlled by emotions, by ego, by the desire to assert oneself. We may believe that we gain control by defending our position, but in reality, we only become more entrenched in the battle. We tie ourselves to the situation, letting it dictate our emotional state. This is the irony of reaction. The more we react, the more we lose control. Does your reaction to a comment or an argument really change the other person's perspective? Or does it just reinforce their own views, deepening the conflict? This is why, in Buddhist philosophy, we are encouraged to practice detachment. When we let go of the need to react, we step outside the emotional storm. Instead of being controlled by the situation, we regain our peace and power. 2. The power of silence. Silence is often perceived as an absence, something passive, inactive, or even weak. In a world that praises the loudest voices, the most forceful opinions, and the quickest retorts, silence can feel like an anomaly. But in the Buddhist tradition, silence is seen not as emptiness, but as a profound expression of wisdom and power. The truth is, the power of silence isn't about choosing to do nothing, it's about choosing to observe, to understand, and to let go of unnecessary reactions. So, what is the real power behind silence, and why is it so often misunderstood? Imagine for a moment that you are in a heated argument, with emotions rising and words flying. The other person is angry, possibly insulting you, challenging your views, or demanding an explanation. What happens if, instead of firing back, you choose to remain silent? Not in a way that seems weak or defeated, but in a way that signifies control, calmness, and understanding. What would the effect be? The answer is profound. Your silence, in that moment, becomes the strongest response. Why? Silence communicates something that words cannot. It communicates peace, self-mastery, and emotional control. When we don't react, we don't engage in the cycle of conflict. We step out of the emotional game that others might be trying to pull us into. It's a subtle but powerful message: I'm not here to fight. I'm here to remain at peace. This idea is echoed in Buddhist teachings about the nature of silence. The Buddha himself was known to have remained silent in situations where speaking would only cause more suffering or deepen misunderstanding. In Buddhism, silence is not a retreat from reality, it's a tool for deeper understanding. Why do we often think that silence means avoiding the situation? Could it be that silence is not avoiding, but choosing not to be swept away by the emotional turmoil of others? When we react to provocation, we are essentially giving up control of our internal state. External events begin to dictate our emotional responses. The Buddhist idea of attachment teaches us that when we are attached to our need to defend ourselves, we open ourselves up to the whims of others. If someone insults us, we feel the need to retaliate. If someone challenges our beliefs, we feel the need to justify them. But silence, when practiced intentionally, is a shield. It's a shield against the forces that would try to provoke us. Imagine the strength it takes not to engage in a battle that's not worth fighting, to walk away from an argument that won't lead to any resolution. This is where true power lies, not in defending oneself, but in knowing when to stay silent. Consider the example of Nelson Mandela during his time in prison. Here was a man who was deeply committed to fighting injustice, yet he chose silence in many moments of provocation, understanding that not every moment required a response. His silence was not weakness, it was strength in its purest form. Mandela knew that silence often spoke louder than words, especially when those words would have been used to fuel division or conflict. Could his silence, in those pivotal moments, have been one of the greatest tools he had in creating long-lasting change? Silence can be a disarming force. Have you ever noticed how, when you remain calm and silent in the face of someone's anger, they begin to lose their own momentum? It's as though your stillness throws them off balance. They want a reaction, a rise in emotion, an argument to fuel their anger. But when you don't give it to them, their energy slowly dissipates. A striking example of this can be found in the way Mahatma Gandhi responded to violence. During India's fight for independence, Gandhi preached non-violence, and he embodied that principle, even when faced with great personal harm. His silence in the face of brutality became a symbol of strength. By refusing to react, he stood firm in his beliefs, showing the world that real power doesn't lie in engaging with violence, it lies in transcending it. Does this kind of silence, born from inner strength, hold the key to disarming those who seek conflict? Silence gives us the opportunity to detach from the emotional chaos around us. Instead of getting involved in someone else's fight, we have the choice to rise above. Isn't this the true meaning of emotional freedom, to no longer be tethered to the emotional reactions of others? The power of silence also brings us closer to clarity. When we stop reacting, we stop being swept up in the emotional noise of the moment. This gives us space to reflect, to observe, and to gain a deeper understanding of the situation. How often do we act impulsively, only to regret our words later? When we choose silence, we give ourselves the gift of space, the space to truly see the situation for what it is, without the distortion of emotional reactions. Buddhism teaches us that mindfulness, the act of being fully present in the moment, is essential for cultivating wisdom. Silence allows us to practice this mindfulness. It's through silence that we begin to truly observe our thoughts, our emotions, and the environment around us. Could it be that, in silence, we can hear the wisdom within, the wisdom that is always there but often drowned out by the noise of our reactions? Let's consider the leadership style of Angela Merkel, the former Chancellor of Germany. Merkel is known for her calm, measured responses to crises, often opting for silence or thoughtful reflection instead of rushing into an emotional or reactive response. Her leadership style, which combines patience and silence, has garnered respect from global leaders and citizens alike. She understands that the power of silence in leadership is not about being passive but about making decisions from a place of wisdom rather than emotion. When faced with complex decisions or difficult situations, how much stronger can a leader be when they don't rush to react, but take the time to gather their thoughts, to listen, and to respond thoughtfully. This applies not only to leadership but to our everyday lives. If we all took a moment of silence before reacting, how much more clarity would we gain in our own decisions? The Buddha himself often emphasized the importance of silence. One story that comes to mind is when a man approached the Buddha, hurling insults and anger towards him. Instead of responding, the Buddha simply remained silent. The man, growing frustrated, demanded an answer, but the Buddha responded, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to take it, to whom does the gift still belong?" In this moment, the Buddha's silence was a powerful teaching. What is it that we are accepting when we react to criticism, anger, or insults? The answer is simple: we accept the emotional turmoil that others try to impose on us. But in silence, we refuse the gift of negativity. We maintain our peace. So, how can we incorporate the power of silence into our own lives? It's not about becoming mute or indifferent to the world around us, it's about recognizing the moments when silence is the most powerful response. It's about knowing when to speak and when to remain still, when to engage and when to walk away. What would happen if, in the face of provocation, we chose to pause, to observe, and to stay grounded in our own peace? In moments of conflict, before you react, ask yourself, does this deserve my energy? Does this need my words? Will responding lead to understanding, or will it simply fuel more conflict? The power of silence, when used wisely, is not only an act of self-control but an invitation to a deeper state of wisdom. It is a reminder that we are not slaves to the opinions of others, nor are we bound by the need to react to every external stimulus. By embracing silence, we open the door to clarity, wisdom, and inner peace. 3. The ego and its role in conflict. In every interaction, there is a force at play that often goes unnoticed, an unseen influence that shapes our actions, our words, and our responses. This force is the ego. The ego is not merely a sense of self, as we often think of it, but an attachment to identity, validation, and a deep desire to be right. The ego thrives in conflict, feeding off of the emotional energy we expend trying to defend our beliefs and assert our superiority. But have you ever wondered, why does the ego feel so compelled to engage in conflict? And more importantly, what happens when we detach from the ego and choose to transcend conflict? Let's dive deep into the role the ego plays in conflict, and why Buddhist teachings suggest that detaching from the ego is the key to true freedom. At its core, the ego's primary desire is to protect itself. It wants to maintain its sense of identity, its beliefs, and its positions. And this desire often manifests in the need to be right. When we are challenged, when someone questions our beliefs or attacks our position, the ego immediately feels threatened. The natural response? Defend. Defend your point of view, defend your ideas, defend yourself. Take, for example, the figure of Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple. Jobs was known for his intense passion and perfectionism. His ego, in many ways, drove the innovation and success of Apple, but it also led to some of his most intense and public conflicts. When his ideas were challenged, he didn't simply accept the critique, he fought back. His ego drove him to prove that he was right, that his vision was the right one. But what does this constant need to defend our beliefs actually do for us? Does it make us stronger, or does it tie us to a cycle of conflict where the goal is not understanding, but simply winning? The truth is that when we defend the ego's position, we often close ourselves off to alternative perspectives. We create an emotional wall around ourselves that prevents true growth, true understanding, and the possibility of peaceful resolution. Can we find peace by constantly defending ourselves? Or is the only thing we truly protect the fragile ego, which ultimately leads to more suffering? One of the greatest illusions that the ego creates is the belief that conflict gives us control. When we react, when we defend ourselves, we feel that we are taking control of the situation, asserting our right to be heard, our right to be validated. However, this belief is misleading. In reality, the more we react, the more we lose control, control of our emotions, our actions, and ultimately our peace. The Buddhist teachings on attachment reveal the underlying truth of this. Attachment to the ego's need to be right, to defend, and to control leads to suffering. By holding on tightly to the belief that we must win every argument, we trap ourselves in a cycle of defensiveness, never truly reaching understanding or resolution. Why does the ego thrive on conflict? Because conflict gives it a sense of importance, a sense of control. But this illusion of control is fleeting. As the Buddha taught, attachment to the self is the root cause of suffering. What if true power comes not from defending ourselves, but from letting go of the need to be right? Another role the ego plays in conflict is the drive to assert superiority. This is often the root of many disputes, from the political debates of world leaders to the arguments between friends and family. The ego wants to feel that it is superior, that it has the right answers, and that it is in control. Take, for instance, someone like Vladimir Putin. Putin's actions on the world stage are often shaped by a desire for dominance, for showing strength and control. In many of his political maneuvers, his ego seeks not to create cooperation, but to assert Russian power, often through conflict and coercion. In many ways, the ego's drive for superiority can be seen as a reflection of fear, the fear of being insignificant, the fear of being wrong, the fear of losing face. So, we react in defense of our ego to protect ourselves from this fear. But is this the path to peace? Is winning an argument or asserting dominance truly what we seek? Or are we simply feeding our fears, perpetuating the cycle of suffering? Buddhism offers a radical alternative to this cycle, the concept of non-attachment to self. When we detach from our ego, we no longer feel the need to assert superiority or defend our position. We recognize that being right is not what defines us. Rather, it is the quality of our actions, our ability to remain peaceful, and our willingness to understand that truly matters. Consider the story of Angulimala, a ruthless bandit who terrorized villages and killed many people. When he encountered the Buddha, he intended to kill him too. However, the Buddha remained calm and unreactive in the face of this violent intent. As Angulimala pursued him, the Buddha continued to walk peacefully, offering only compassion and kindness. In this encounter, the Buddha's refusal to engage with Angulimala's ego-driven anger disarmed the bandit. Eventually, Angulimala was moved by the Buddha's unshakable peace, and he asked for forgiveness. Through the Buddha's non-reaction, Angulimala's ego was broken, and he was transformed. This story illustrates the immense power of non-reaction and the wisdom of disengaging from the ego's need to assert itself. By choosing not to react to Angulimala's violence, the Buddha showed that the true strength lies in transcending the ego's desire for confrontation. Isn't the ability to remain unshaken in the face of aggression a powerful testament to the strength that arises from detachment? Could we, too, find strength in letting go of the need to defend ourselves in every confrontation? To truly break free from the cycle of conflict, we must learn to detach from the ego. Detachment doesn't mean denying our sense of self, it means recognizing that our worth does not depend on being right, being validated, or being superior. It means understanding that our true self is not bound to the ever-changing fluctuations of conflict and argument. Instead, our true self is a place of stillness, peace, and understanding. In the modern world, this is a radical act. It goes against the grain of a society that thrives on competition, confrontation, and the need to be seen as superior. But what would happen if we all practiced detachment from the ego? Would our conversations be more thoughtful, our relationships more peaceful, and our lives more fulfilled? The key to true freedom lies not in defending our position, but in recognizing that we are already whole, regardless of the outcome of any argument. Next time you feel the urge to defend yourself, to argue, or to assert your superiority, take a moment to reflect. Is this about truth, or is it about the ego's need to be right? Is this conflict serving you, or is it draining your energy? Can peace exist without the ego's constant need to prove itself? In the end, the ego's role in conflict is clear, it seeks validation, control, and superiority, but it brings only suffering. The true path to peace is found in detaching from the ego's need to defend, control, and dominate. It is found in letting go of the need to be right and, instead, embracing the wisdom of non-reaction. When we do this, we not only free ourselves from the cycle of conflict but also find the true peace that lies beyond the ego's grasp. 4. When to engage and when to walk away. In a world that constantly challenges us, whether through disagreements, criticism, or conflict, it can often feel as though we must respond to every provocation. Our instinct is to defend, to explain, or to justify ourselves. Yet, the true wisdom lies not in reacting to every challenge but in knowing when to engage and when to walk away. How do we discern when to speak up and when to remain silent? How do we navigate the complex terrain of conflict with wisdom and peace? In this section, we will explore practical examples of when to engage in a conversation and when to step back, using real-life situations and Buddhist teachings to guide our reflections. There are times when engaging in a conversation or a debate can lead to growth, understanding, and resolution. These are the moments when both parties are open to listening and sharing, when the goal is not to win, but to understand. Engaging in these situations fosters mutual respect and can deepen relationships. Take, for example, the relationship between Malala Yousafzai and the world. Malala was a young girl who, despite immense personal danger, stood up for the rights of girls to receive an education. She engaged with world leaders, presented her case with grace, and spoke truth to power. Her silence in the face of oppression was not an option. Instead, she used her voice to advocate for something much greater than herself. In these kinds of situations, speaking up is not only necessary, it's vital. Malala's courage to engage in meaningful dialogue with the world was a powerful act of service, one that allowed her to challenge global norms and bring about change. What would happen if we, too, spoke up for what truly matters, not out of ego or to win an argument, but to foster understanding and justice? However, engagement is only valuable when there is an openness to dialogue and mutual understanding. If the intention is simply to prove one's point or to dominate the conversation, it may be wiser to remain silent. Most of the time, conflicts aren't about truth, they are about ego. One person feels the need to prove themselves right, while the other does the same. When this happens, no meaningful progress can be made. In these situations, it's crucial to recognize that engaging will only perpetuate the cycle of ego-driven conflict. Consider the ongoing political debates we see between world leaders like Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Each of them has a different vision and often engage in public confrontations with each other. Yet, do we ever see them truly listening to one another, or is the goal simply to dominate the conversation and win? The cycle of argument continues without resolution, and the world watches as these leaders try to outdo one another. This dynamic is not exclusive to politics. We often find ourselves in similar situations in our personal lives. In these moments, walking away is not a sign of weakness, it is an act of wisdom. When you realize that the conversation is no longer about finding common ground, but about winning the argument, stepping away is the most powerful choice. In Buddhism, there is a teaching that encourages us to disengage from the cycle of samsara, the continuous cycle of suffering caused by attachment. In these moments of ego-driven conflict, walking away is an act of liberation from that cycle. Sometimes, in the heat of the moment, emotions take over. When anger, frustration, or defensiveness clouds our judgment, any conversation becomes a battle rather than a dialogue. In these situations, it's better to take a step back, allow the emotional intensity to dissipate, and return when the emotions are under control. Imagine a time when you were in a heated argument with someone close to you, perhaps a partner, family member, or friend. How many times have those arguments escalated because emotions took control? In moments like these, saying something in the heat of anger often results in words we regret later. Walking away gives both parties the space to calm down and regain perspective. The Buddha taught that right speech is one of the Eightfold Path's fundamental principles. This means speaking only when words are true, necessary, and kind. When emotions are clouding our judgment, we risk speaking untruths or saying things that only serve to hurt others. Therefore, walking away to calm the mind is not just practical, it's wise. Constructive feedback, when delivered with kindness and respect, can be an incredibly valuable tool for growth. However, this type of engagement requires a mindset free from ego and a willingness to help rather than to win. Constructive feedback is meant to foster improvement, not to belittle or put someone down. An excellent example of this is Oprah Winfrey. Oprah, as a successful television personality, often engages in interviews that offer not just superficial conversations but deep, constructive feedback. Whether speaking with guests about personal struggles or discussing sensitive topics, Oprah does so in a way that is meant to uplift, heal, and encourage reflection. Her words are not meant to argue or win, they are meant to guide and inspire. In your own life, when you are in a position to offer feedback, consider whether your intention is to help or to win the conversation. If your goal is constructive, engage with care and thoughtfulness. But if your intention is driven by the ego's need to prove yourself or dominate, it may be wiser to remain silent and reflect before speaking. Once a conversation shifts from the issue at hand to personal attacks, it's no longer a productive discussion. The focus has moved from finding solutions or understanding to hurting the other person, and this is when walking away becomes necessary. Think of a time when someone attacked your character, rather than your argument. How did that feel? Personal attacks often escalate conflicts and cloud the possibility of resolution. This is when the ego is fully engaged, and the conversation has shifted from constructive to destructive. At this point, walking away is not avoidance, it's an act of self-respect. By walking away, we are saying to the other person that we refuse to engage in a cycle of hurt and negativity. We are also acknowledging that no good can come from continuing the discussion under these conditions. The wisdom of knowing when to engage or walk away comes from being deeply in tune with our emotional state. If we are calm and centered, we are more likely to engage in a manner that fosters peace and understanding. The key is emotional awareness. When you are at peace within yourself, your words and actions are aligned with that inner peace, allowing you to engage in productive dialogue. A practical example of this might be the way Nelson Mandela responded to his adversaries. After years of imprisonment, Mandela emerged as a figure of peace and reconciliation. His calmness, even in the face of deep adversity, allowed him to engage with his political enemies without descending into conflict. His ability to stay centered, both emotionally and mentally, allowed him to engage in difficult conversations with an open heart and mind. In your own life, take a moment to check in with your emotional state before responding. Are you calm and centered, or are you on the verge of reacting? Engaging only when you are at peace allows you to approach conversations from a place of wisdom, rather than from the ego's need to prove itself. 5. The freedom of non-reaction. In a world dominated by constant stimuli, opinions, provocations, criticisms, and praise, it can be incredibly difficult to resist the urge to react. From the moment we wake up to the time we go to bed, we are bombarded with external forces that demand a response, whether from our family, friends, co-workers, or even strangers. Yet, there is a quiet, powerful freedom that comes when we choose not to react. This is the freedom of non-reaction, the profound peace that arises when we learn to detach from the impulse to defend, argue, or respond to everything that comes our way. But what does it mean to truly experience the freedom of non-reaction? And why is it so essential to cultivating inner peace and wisdom? Let's explore how non-reaction can liberate us from the endless cycle of emotional turmoil and help us reclaim control over our lives. When we react, we are essentially giving up control of our emotional state to someone or something outside of ourselves. If someone insults us and we react angrily, we are letting their words control our emotions. If we respond defensively to criticism, we allow another's judgment to dictate our sense of self-worth. In these moments, we are not free, we are slaves to the whims of external events. Take, for example, Rihanna, the globally famous pop star who has often been scrutinized and criticized by the media. Time and again, she has faced harsh commentary from critics and fans alike, yet her response is often one of remarkable calm. Rather than becoming emotionally entangled in the public's judgments, she's demonstrated that the greatest strength lies in choosing to remain unfazed by external provocation. What happens when we choose not to react to the chaos around us? We reclaim our power. We stop giving our peace away to others, and instead, we keep it for ourselves. This is where true freedom lies. When we stop reacting to everything, we take back control of our inner state. We stop letting the external world dictate our emotional responses and instead choose how we respond, if at all. The practice of non-reaction liberates us from the emotional chaos of the world, creating a space for calm and clarity to arise. The ego thrives on conflict. It feeds on the need to be right, to defend itself, to assert its superiority. Every time we react to an insult, a challenge, or a provocation, we are feeding the ego's desire for validation. The ego doesn't care about understanding, peace, or resolution. It cares only about winning, being right, and protecting its fragile sense of self. But what happens when we choose to step back, to refrain from reacting? We free ourselves from the ego's grip. Instead of defending our position or attacking others, we let go of the need to be right. We stop identifying with our thoughts, our beliefs, or our opinions. We recognize that we are not our ego, we are something deeper, something far more peaceful and expansive. In Buddhism, there is a profound teaching about the nature of the self. The Buddha teaches that the self is a construct, a collection of thoughts and beliefs that we have attached ourselves to. But when we let go of this attachment to the self, we experience a sense of liberation. We no longer feel the need to defend or justify ourselves because we recognize that our true nature is not bound by the ego. Imagine, for a moment, a world where we no longer felt the compulsion to defend our opinions or prove our worth. Wouldn't that be the true freedom? When we disengage from the ego, we stop the endless cycle of conflict and suffering. We are no longer chained to the need to be right or to prove ourselves, and in this liberation, we discover a profound peace. Non-reaction doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means practicing detachment, not from the world itself, but from the emotional turbulence that comes with it. When we are detached, we can engage with the world without being overwhelmed by it. We can listen without taking offense, we can respond without reacting emotionally, and we can navigate challenges with clarity and equanimity. Take, for instance, the example of Mahatma Gandhi, a leader who embodied non-reaction in the face of overwhelming injustice. Gandhi was faced with incredible provocations, from the British Empire's colonial rule to the personal assaults he endured. Yet, through his practice of non-violence and non-reaction, he became a beacon of peace and resilience. Gandhi understood that true freedom doesn't come from defeating your opponent, it comes from refusing to let external events disturb your inner peace. This principle of non-reaction is at the heart of Buddhist practice. Buddhism teaches us to observe our thoughts and emotions without attachment. When we can observe, without reacting, we free ourselves from the tyranny of emotional impulses and create space for true peace. Choosing not to react in every situation is not just an act of self-control, it is an act of wisdom. It takes great insight to know that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every comment deserves a response. In a world that demands constant engagement, learning to remain silent or walk away is a rare and invaluable skill. A powerful example of this wisdom can be seen in the leadership of Nelson Mandela. During his time as a political prisoner and leader of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, Mandela chose non-reaction in many situations, not because he lacked the courage to engage, but because he knew that the most powerful action was often to remain silent. Mandela's silence in the face of injustice wasn't about weakness, it was a deliberate strategy, a powerful choice to preserve his energy and his vision for peace. Wisdom lies in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. There are moments when speaking up is necessary, when injustice must be addressed, when truths must be spoken. But there are also moments when silence speaks louder than words, when non-reaction is the most powerful statement we can make. The freedom of non-reaction comes when we learn to discern these moments and act with wisdom. Non-reaction isn't about suppressing emotions or denying their existence. It's about mastering our emotions so that they don't control us. When we practice non-reaction, we begin to recognize that emotions are temporary, they come and go like waves on the ocean. We learn that we are not our emotions, and that we don't need to act on every impulse. Imagine you are walking down the street and someone cuts you off in traffic. Your immediate reaction might be anger, perhaps you feel the urge to honk your horn or shout something rude. But what if, instead of reacting, you paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and let the anger pass? In that moment, you would be practicing emotional mastery. You wouldn't allow your anger to dictate your actions. You would have the power to choose how to respond. This ability to control our emotional responses is a key aspect of Buddhist mindfulness practice. Through mindfulness, we learn to observe our emotions without judgment, to let them rise and fall without attachment. In doing so, we regain control over our emotional state and begin to experience a profound freedom from reactive patterns. The freedom of non-reaction is not about avoiding conflict or running away from life's challenges. It's about finding peace within ourselves, no matter what is happening around us. True freedom is the ability to remain unshaken in the face of external chaos, to choose peace over provocation, and to let go of the need to control or engage in every situation. Imagine being in the midst of a storm, with winds howling and rain pouring down. Most people would struggle against the storm, trying to resist its power. But what if, instead of fighting, you simply chose to stand firm, unaffected by the storm around you? This is the freedom of non-reaction, the ability to remain calm and centered, no matter how strong the winds of life may blow. In the end, the freedom of non-reaction is a path to true inner peace. It is the ability to transcend the chaos of the world and find stillness within. When we stop reacting to every provocation, we stop giving our peace away. We regain control of our emotional state, and we begin to live with the clarity, wisdom, and tranquility that only non-reaction can bring. Part 6: The Art of Detachment. In a world that constantly demands more of us, more attention, more involvement, more reactions, it can be incredibly challenging to remain detached. Detachment, however, is not about withdrawing from the world or becoming indifferent to the people around us. It is about finding the balance between engaging with life fully and recognizing that not everything deserves our emotional investment. So, what is the art of detachment, and why is it essential for inner peace and freedom? The art of detachment is a profound practice that allows us to navigate life without being pulled into the emotional turbulence that often surrounds us. It is the ability to observe without becoming entangled, to interact without becoming attached, and to remain at peace regardless of the circumstances. Let's explore what detachment truly means, how it can be cultivated, and why it holds the key to a life of freedom and tranquility. Detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means disconnecting from everything and everyone, shutting oneself off emotionally, or avoiding life's challenges altogether. But detachment, in its truest sense, is not about avoiding life. It's about choosing how much of yourself you give to life. The Buddhist concept of detachment revolves around the idea of non-attachment. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root cause of suffering. Attachment to people, possessions, ideas, or outcomes creates a bond that keeps us tethered to the fluctuations of life. These attachments are like chains, and every time we hold on too tightly, we risk being pulled into the storms of life. Storms of anger, disappointment, fear, and sadness. Consider the example of Oprah Winfrey, who has had to deal with intense public scrutiny and personal challenges throughout her career. Despite the pressures of fame and public judgment, Oprah has mastered the art of detachment. She is deeply involved in the causes she cares about, yet she does not allow herself to be consumed by the opinions or expectations of others. Her ability to remain focused on her mission, rather than being distracted by external pressures, is a perfect example of how detachment enables us to engage fully without becoming emotionally entangled. In Buddhist teachings, detachment is not about abandoning the world, it's about not letting the world define us. It's about not being owned by our possessions, our opinions, or even our relationships. Detachment frees us from the need to control every aspect of our lives and allows us to experience life as it is, without the burden of emotional entanglement. When we are attached to the outcome of every situation, we place an incredible amount of pressure on ourselves. We constantly worry about what others think, how situations will unfold, and whether or not we are doing things right. This constant attachment to results can drain our energy and lead to frustration. Take, for instance, the public persona of Beyoncé, who is often seen as a symbol of perfection. Behind the scenes, however, Beyoncé has openly discussed the pressure and emotional toll that comes with such a high level of expectation. But she has also shown a remarkable ability to detach from the need to be perfect. By releasing the attachment to perfection and the fear of failure, she is able to maintain her peace and focus on what truly matters: her art, her family, and her purpose. Detachment, then, gives us the freedom to be ourselves without the weight of external expectations. It allows us to release the attachment to outcomes that we cannot control. When we let go of the need to force or manipulate outcomes, we free ourselves from the emotional turmoil that comes with constant worry and stress. This emotional freedom is the foundation of a peaceful and balanced life. One of the most common sources of conflict is our attachment to being right. When we believe that our opinions are the only valid ones, we become attached to the idea that we must always defend ourselves, prove our point, and win every argument. This attachment to being right fuels ego-driven conflicts that drain our energy and prevent real understanding from occurring. A powerful example of detachment from the need to be right can be found in Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence. Gandhi did not feel the need to prove that his perspective on India's independence movement was the right one. Instead, he focused on living in alignment with his principles and engaging in peaceful resistance. By detaching from the need to win or be right, Gandhi transformed the world around him and created lasting change. In our own lives, how often do we engage in arguments just to prove that we are right? Is the need to be right worth the emotional cost of conflict? The art of detachment teaches us that it is not about winning arguments, it is about cultivating understanding, compassion, and peace. When we release the attachment to being right, we open ourselves to the possibility of learning, growing, and connecting with others on a deeper level. Another key aspect of detachment is learning to let go of the attachment to specific outcomes. How many times have we held on tightly to a desired result, only to be disappointed when things didn't go the way we planned? This attachment to expectations creates unnecessary stress and keeps us focused on the future, rather than the present moment. Consider the career of Steve Jobs, whose journey with Apple was filled with countless setbacks and unexpected challenges. Jobs faced failure and rejection, yet his ability to detach from the specific outcome of any one situation allowed him to stay focused on the bigger picture. His attachment was not to the success of a single product or company, it was to the vision of creating something transformative. By letting go of the attachment to specific results, Jobs was able to remain resilient in the face of adversity and build one of the most iconic companies in history. Detaching from outcomes doesn't mean giving up on our goals, it means releasing the need for control. When we let go of the attachment to specific outcomes, we are able to fully immerse ourselves in the process and experience life as it comes, rather than trying to force it into a particular mold. One of the most challenging areas of attachment is in our relationships. We often attach our sense of happiness, security, and self-worth to the people around us. But attachment to relationships, whether it's with a partner, family member, or friend, can create dependence and emotional turmoil when things go wrong. Take the example of Buddha's teachings on loving-kindness. The Buddha emphasized that true love is not possessive or driven by attachment. He taught that love should be free from clinging and should come from a place of inner peace, rather than from the need for validation or security. Loving without attachment allows us to care deeply for others without becoming emotionally dependent on them for our happiness. In our own lives, we can practice detachment by allowing our relationships to be free of possessiveness, jealousy, or the need to control others. True love comes from a place of freedom, where both people are free to be themselves without fear of losing each other. When we release the attachment to the need for others to fulfill us, we experience a deeper, more authentic connection that is based on mutual respect and understanding. The practice of mindfulness and meditation is a powerful tool for cultivating detachment. By learning to observe our thoughts and emotions without identifying with them, we create the space to let go of attachments. Meditation allows us to detach from the constant stream of thoughts and judgments that define our experience of the world, and to simply be present with what is. A key practice in Buddhist mindfulness is to observe the mind without judgment, to watch as thoughts and emotions arise, and to let them pass without clinging to them. This practice teaches us that our thoughts and emotions are not who we are, they are temporary phenomena that come and go. When we detach from the need to control our thoughts or feelings, we experience a profound sense of freedom. As we've uncovered today, the power of detachment isn't about withdrawing from life, it's about living with greater awareness and freedom. It's about breaking free from the emotional traps that keep us bound to the whims of others. When we detach from the need to react, we reclaim our peace and clarity. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever practiced detachment in your life? How did it impact your relationships or your inner peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Serenity Path for more wisdom on creating a life of tranquility, clarity, and emotional mastery. Remember, true freedom comes when we stop reacting to the world around us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay peaceful, stay centered.